Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Danny.
Welcome back to Actors Making It podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. Welcome to Actors Making It podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. So this is thank you for coming and doing this. We have had, for those listening, I've had a number of people ask me about my own personal story and my kind of background in acting and what's got me where I am. So I thought, why not do a podcast where I give you that information?
Yes.
And Rachel, who is a wonderful podcast host in her own right, has kindly offered to ask me some questions for Actors Making It. So that's what we're doing here today. Thank you again for agreeing to do this, Rachel.
Of course. This is how I want to spend all of my Saturdays, is just podcasting with you, Danny.
I feel I've got to keep thinking in my mind not to jump into question mode.
Yeah. I completely get that. And when you interviewed me on on this podcast, I always feel like I talk so much and a million miles an hour, but I get so many guests say the same to me. Like when you interview someone and they go, "Oh my God, I talked so much." And you go, "Well, that's the point. It's a podcast where I'm asking you questions." So it may feel a bit weird, but don't worry. I've commandeered the ship. And we're just gonna go with it. I might slip into my don't be so dramatic line of questioning, and we're on the wrong podcast. So, so Danny, you are an actor. You're a filmmaker. You're a podcaster. So I read on your bio, because I went and had a little bit of a squiz, that I feel like you and I are very similar in our journey as creatives, because, your interest in the industry first kind of started out in high school, as many of ours do, and it was in theatre as well, which is the same as mine. And now we both predominantly work in screen. So I'm very interested to hear, because we might be like the other gender of each other, which is so fun.
Yes, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So tell me about in high school, what was your experience with acting? What was your high school experience with doing drama and theatre and all that sort of thing?
Well, my experience actually started a lot earlier than high school. I've kind of been performing on and off since primary school. So my interest kind of started pretty young, but it's kind of weird, right? Well, I would say that I'm quite an insecure or shy-ish person, contrary to popular belief, for those of people that know me. But I moved around a lot as a kid. So when I was younger, my mum moved so many times. Put it this way, I went to 14 different 14 different primary schools.
Oh my God.
5 of them I went to twice. And I went to 5 high schools, 3 twice. So I moved around a lot. And every time I moved, I didn't really make that many friends. I kind of hung out in the library, and I didn't develop friendships. And I kind of felt like, I was invisible and I wasn't seen, because I was always the new kid, or if I was seen, it was for the wrong reasons. And initially I started out performing just because it was fun. I think my earliest kind of performance was, I think it was year 4, and it was the drama teacher, her name was Wendy, I can't remember her surname. She was so lovely. And we did this production, or this dance, which was a dance to Thriller by Michael Jackson. And that was my first kind of experience of some kind of performance. And then I'd always had that kind of interest. But then fast forward to high school, which is when I started to get into it a little bit more. I did some drama and some performance stuff. And it was the reaction that I got was, it felt like it was the first time I was being seen. And I then, I guess, became a little bit addicted to feeling like people are paying attention to me. I'm feeling that I now have a reason for people to want to pay attention. And I guess I became a little bit addicted to that initially. So that's kind of where the first interest in drama came from. I mean, I was always interested in acting as a whole because, you know, like most people, I watched loads of films and TV and just kind of loved that. But so I'm doing exactly what I think people are doing when they're on my podcast, when I'm interviewing them and like giving a really long-winded answer and not actually answering the question.
You did answer the question. Definitely. But it's interesting. It's interesting the way that you say, like, you know, you got addicted to that sense of like being seen and people paying attention to you. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know if you're saying it as like, like negatively, I got addicted to the attention. But no. Like for anyone listening, it's not a negative thing, and it's completely understandable with the childhood that you were experiencing. Like, of course, you know, if you are moving around so much that you just don't really get to know people and people don't really get to know you, and so therefore you just feel like you're in the background, of course, your mind and yourself is going to do something in order to be seen and be heard, because I think that that is an innate necessary human thing, is to feel like you are being heard in whatever sense that is. So that's very interesting and very understandable.
It was, that was the kind of initial catalyst, but then eventually once to this day, I still love it, is when and this is what kind of drives me. I love being able to move people. I love being able to make someone feel something from whatever it is that my performance is, whether it's theatre, screen, or singing, anything like that. If I can move someone, that to me is what I love the most now, and kind of what has kept me going.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's always interesting to hear the reasons of like why people do the things that they do. And I think once you kind of get into the stage of you've been doing this thing for years kind of thing, and you figure out what your reason is, everyone's is very different and all very relevant. I would say, like, for me, my reason for acting is I want people to feel like they're not alone. Like, I want to convey something that makes someone go, oh, someone else has felt the way that I feel. I felt like I was, you know, alone in this before that. So, but it takes a while to figure that out. I think at first, it's okay to do it just because you like the attention and you get that, like, this is a thing that I like. I think it takes a while to figure out the why. And it can't be rushed because it's that experience that brings it, you know.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
And I think it's really important, like, from my perspective, to, I guess, keep that in mind as you continue to go through the journey of acting. And it's very easy to get sucked in by the bright lights of what being a known actor could possibly bring to you. And I think a lot of people tend to get driven by that and then let that overshadow the purpose of what they're doing. And then that in turn makes them second guess whether they are good or not, because they're not reaching that particular height of acting, if that's the kind of thing that's drawing them to the world.
Definitely. Now, when you finished high school, what were your thoughts? Like, were you thinking, I need to go to drama school because you went to Screenwise for a year, you've done AMAW and all of those wonderful courses here in Sydney. But you also work, now, it's organisational
Change management.
Let me try. Yes. Organizational change management. So what were your thoughts? That's what you do, as you know, as all of us do as well. We all have that job that pays the bills. So what were your thoughts leaving high school in terms of pursuing acting, but also having a job in which you get money from on a weekly basis?
Okay, so this is, first of all, the organizational change management stuff didn't start until 5 years ago, but I'll talk about that in a moment. When I was in high school, up until year 11, I was pretty much like a straight A, well, year 10, I was kind of like pretty much a straight A kind of student. And then in year 11 and 12 is when I actually started doing drama as a subject. All along the journey, I think I had different career choices that I wanted to be. At one point, I wanted to be a lawyer. I always wanted to be an actor. But the logical part of me was like, okay, well, I need a proper job. So I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to be a veterinary surgeon. I wanted to be an accountant. And then I think it got to year 11 when I was choosing. I didn't even start drama at the beginning of year 11. I think it got like a couple of months into year 11. And I was like, I don't want to, this lawyer stuff is shit. Like, I don't want to do this. I want to be an actor. And that's when I switched to drama. And I kind of, at that point in my life, switched off from most of the subjects and really applying myself, because I just felt like it was irrelevant to my life, because I wanted to be an actor. I didn't need to have these things. I wanted to be an actor. So I went through, it was really funny actually, at the end of year, actually, it got to I think the third term of year 12. I went to school in Queensland. Got to the third term of year 12, and I applied to something called the Brisbane Actors Conservatory, or auditioned for the Brisbane Actors Conservatory, which was, I don't even remember how many years course, or what the degree was, if any. I just applied and auditioned and got in. And it was that point I was like, I don't even need to fucking try and pass the OP exam, because I have got into acting school. I don't really care about anything else. And then I just stopped. Like, you have the final year, like the HSC here in New South Wales. HSC in New South Wales, is that right? Right?
Yeah,
we had an OP exam. And I got, like, number 1 is the highest, 25 is the lowest. I got a 21 because I just didn't apply myself to that exam, because I had already got into acting school, and that was my dream. At the end of year 12, I got my acting teacher, my actual grade for acting was a VLA, which stands for very low achievement, which is effectively an E as a grade. But that was because I didn't care about theory. And my acting teacher, the drama teacher said to me, "You are the most talented VLA student I have ever taught." And I was like, okay. But I just want to act. I just want to perform. That's all I really care about. So I didn't apply myself. Anyway, fast forward. I started the Brisbane Actors Conservatory the year after high school. And that was what I wanted to do. And I think I just worked in a bar and got a day job selling internet. I worked for a door-to-door sales, as a door-to-door salesman. Oh, this is like really early. Like, this is 2001, right? It's not before the internet existed, because I'm not that old, but it was before the internet is what we know it as today. And it wasn't as easy to create your own website. You had to pay somebody to create a website for you. And I was going door-to-door selling web development services, and then going and doing the Brisbane Actors Conservatory at night time. Anyway, a few months into the Brisbane Actors Conservatory course, my grandfather died on a family vacation, had a heart attack on a tennis court. He was like early 60s, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I had wanted to move to the UK. And I thought, and in my head, I was like, if I move to the UK, I could pursue acting there. But then I put all of that behind me. I was like, no, I can't do that. blah, blah, blah. There were some other reasons which I won't go into, but to do with meeting a man on the internet. But that's a whole irrelevant story to acting. But it was one of the catalysts to wanting to move to the UK. Anyway, my grandfather died, and it was in that moment that I went, life is too short to say no. I don't want to, I can't do that. And I turned 18 in July 2001, and it was at the point that my grandfather died that I was like, that's it, I'm going to move to the UK. I'm moving to Manchester, that's what I'm doing. And then I moved to Manchester in September 2001, quit the Brisbane Actors Conservatory, went to the UK with dreams of making it as an actor. And then a bunch of things kind of happened in my life, which have all led me to be who I am today. But effectively, I got there. I didn't pursue acting completely. I got an agent. I got an extras agent initially. I got a job working in a call center, where I ended up being for 6 years. But I got this job with an extras agency, and I started to get work. I had some work on Hollyoaks. I got extra work in a commercial for British Airways. I got some extra work for Brookside, like a couple of really well-known UK TV series. But I was working in this call center, and this call center was for RAC Breakdown, which is the equivalent to like the NRMA breakdown services here in New South Wales. And they would give us our roster for 12 months. So we knew exactly when we were working shift-wise, 12 months in advance, so that we could plan around it. And at that point in my life, I did not know, appreciate, or understand what it took to become an actor. I didn't know the sacrifices that you needed to make. I didn't know you had to put acting before your paying day job. So I had this agency that was calling me and going, we've got an audition, we've got this. And then I'd be like, oh, I can't do it tomorrow because I've got a shift, so I can't go. Because if I took a day off work at that particular company, I would be dragged over the coals, and I'd be sat down and told, do you understand the position that you put the organisation in? We are saving people's lives on the side of the road, and you not coming to work is a really big thing, blah, blah, blah. So I was saying no to all of these opportunities, and eventually the agency was like, we're not calling you anymore. We're done.
Yeah.
And that was that. So that was my first kind of like, oh, okay. Anyway, that was a very long-winded answer.
It was not long-winded because this is a podcast. And this is what we're supposed to do.
I know. But that was my journey to kind of getting to the UK. And then there's obviously a bunch of, I'm 39 in July. And this is like, I was 18 when I moved. So there's a bunch of other things that kind of happened and that I went through, but I'll allow you to ask questions before I just delve into vomiting my story.
And may I say, if you only listen to the audio of this podcast, Danny looks very good for his age. I always think that he's like in his 20s. So,
that's kind. Thank you.
Not that late 30s is old at all, obviously. I want to first and foremost say that. But, he looks after himself, and that's very evident.
Funny story on age. So I've just signed with an agent in the UK, which is exciting because obviously, as regular listeners know, I'm moving at the end of the year. But I met him at Sydney Actors Association. He was visiting from the UK, and we were chatting, and he's like, "Oh, how old are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'll be 39 in July." And he goes, "Oh, you look a lot younger." And I went, "Oh, thanks. I appreciate that." And he goes, "It's not a compliment." And I'm like, I mean, I'm taking it as a compliment, but what do you mean? And he goes, "Well, you need to know that your playing age is 30 to maybe 35. And if your agent is putting you up for anything that's above 35 and older than that, you're not getting auditions because you look too young for the part." And I'm like, "Oh, that's really interesting." So yeah.
That is interesting.
Knowing your playing age, I think, is really important. Well,
yeah, definitely.
Apparently, it's really important.
Apparently so. So the whole moving overseas when you're quite young, again, Another thing that we have in common is that our early kind of like out of high school, early 20s kind of thing was tumultuous, and it's kind of formed the people that we are today. And so I definitely understand that. And like, you know, moving to a completely different country, and I'm assuming, well, I know that you have a UK passport, so I'm assuming that you have family in the UK, but still it's not like you moved with someone and moved into a house with someone that you know, kind of thing. And
I did, but I didn't know them. But that's a whole, I moved with someone which was a cousin of my dad's, and she kicked me out after about 5 or 6 weeks. She was very religious, very Christian, and very homophobic. And I think once she realized that I was gay, she effectively asked me to leave. And long story, I was then homeless for a while. So
oh my God, that's
I ended up squatting in like a derelict kind of council property for a few months until I was offered a property through the council, which is like the housing commission scheme here. I make it sound more dire than it was. A council worker allowed me to squat because I was so young. He kind of like put a mattress in there for me and an oven, and so I could lock myself away from the world, but it was still like a derelict building. I didn't have like a proper home, but yeah, that was the beginning of my adult life when I moved to the UK.
I love how you
18.
you explain that like it's not as bad as I say it was, Danny. I mean, like, I'm not saying, oh, that's bad, but like, you know, I think sometimes we think like parts of our story were like, oh, you know, my dad didn't leave, and so that means that my childhood was okay. But really, my therapist is like, no, Rachel, you have some things that happen to you that are not okay. And just because, and I think the same when you say that, like, you know, just because you think, oh, well, you know, I did have a mattress and it was fine. It's like, but that is still so formative, especially in your young years. And yeah, so that's a lot. And I'm very sorry that happened to you.
You know, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm a relatively positive person for the most part. And I've always chosen, for the most part, up until we got to kind of COVID, to look on the bright side of life. I tend to live in a world where life is what we make it, and we end up where we are based on decisions that we make. Sorry, my phone started to ring and then it cut into my headphones for some reason.
We're busy.
Hello, we're recording a podcast. I've kind of always been of the thought of the mindset that life is what we make it, and we end up where we are based on decisions that we make. And what I mean by that is terrible things can happen to us. Terrible things can happen to people, and I by no means want to diminish anything that anybody ever feels or goes through or experiences in their life. But we personally have the power to tap into the mindset of either accountability or I'm going to let that define me and wallow in the pity of that thing and then make that my personality.
Yeah.
I chose in that moment of my life to look at it as the positive of, you know what, I am technically kind of homeless, but I've got a door that can lock in this little derelict building. And I just looked at that as this is the first time I've lived alone in my life. I'm 18. I've got my own little place where I can stay. This is before smartphones, so I could go and sit in an internet cafe till 2:00 in the morning chatting to people and come home and nobody's going to question where I've been till 2 a.m. in the morning. And I just looked at it as the positive, and that's kind of the way that I look at it. I know deep down that that could have been quite a traumatic thing to happen to someone. And I could, depending on how I looked at it, I could have gone down a route of being a homeless person for the rest of my life. But I looked at it, I chose to look at it very differently and still applied myself towards the life that I wanted to achieve, what I wanted out of my life in the UK.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, it really makes you think that you really must want to be an actor and enjoy working as an actor, because, as you say, like it's so easy to take the easy road and be like, this is it. This is how my life's going to be for the next 50 years. But it's like,
yep.
And I think that's really, it should be encouraging for yourself, because, you know, we all have those moments where we go, do I want to do this anymore? And it's like, yeah, I do. And that's a great thing. It's a good thing to have those questions and to question like, am I feeling this acting thing still? And the answer to be yes. And if it's no, that's fine. But yeah, I think that should be encouraging for yourself to be like, no, like I know what I want and I want to do it and I'm going to work for it, because obviously in this industry, you have to work for it. You have to do the work. And so I think it's also really probably very formative that you had to do a lot of work in order to get to where you are today, because, you know, like making those decisions and being like, okay, how am I going to go from here to like then prioritizing acting? And as you said, with your job and stuff like that, you have to, I think some lessons have to be learnt the hard way. And, you know, I think I've been there as well. You go, oh, well, I have to work for money, so I have to do that instead of going to an audition. Or like, I think early on, I was just not knowledgeable at all about agents or headshots or any of those sorts of things. And so I didn't have any of them, but I was like, I'm still wanting to be an actor, but I just had no idea how to do it. And it took me years to figure it out because no one told me. And so, but now I'm really glad, because I'm like, okay, I know this shit. It's okay.
And now you're imparting that wisdom on everybody through your podcast, and
I am.
I'm hoping, you know, I obviously try to do the same with mine. As you know, over the past few years, self-tapes have become the norm, and they are being used by more and more industry professionals to cast all sorts of productions. I've personally recorded self-tapes for theatre and TV and film and commercials, and it makes life easier for casting as they can see more options. But what isn't easy for us actors is finding someone to read for us in the moment that we need them. That's where We Audition comes in. We Audition is an online video chat community where you can call someone that has marked themselves available and they will read for you for your audition. You can use We Audition to rehearse, film, or just ask questions that may help your audition. Last year I had an actor contact me who had never drank alcohol, who just wanted to know how to play drunk. You can sign up to We Audition to be a reader yourself. I log into We Audition most days and I just leave it on, and people call and I accept, and I help them with their auditions. So you can earn a little extra cash doing that, and you can just meet some great people. I even helped one of the main cast of Morning Wars tape an audition towards the end of last year. Look, it's a great platform, and if you're going to sign up to be a reader, it basically pays for itself. So if you want to sign up to be a reader on We Audition, you can get 25% off using the Actors Making It discount code MAKINGIT. So just go to www.weaudition.com and use the code MAKINGIT when you sign up.
From the UK and then, you know, having your council home, when did you come back to Australia and start, you know, kind of pursuing acting here? When did that happen? Or also, I know that you said that there were a few things that were like, you wanted to mention in terms of what happened in the UK that were very
in
like...
the UK, yeah.
Yeah, so what happened there? What made you come back to Australia?
Come back. Okay, so I'll speed through the other UK stuff. So I worked in this call centre for 6 years. The agent said that they wouldn't work with me anymore. And I kind of thought, okay, well, what do I do? How do I get into acting without giving up my job? what do I need to do to get there? And, you know, I went from homeless to be getting a council property. I had a full-time job to then owning a home. So I owned my place over there, and I had a mortgage. I had responsibilities. I couldn't just like quit everything and go to the acting, because I had a car loan and I had a mortgage to pay for and responsibility and all that kind of stuff. So then I was like, okay, maybe I should try the education thing again. And in 2006, I started a Bachelor of Performing Arts at Salford University in Manchester. So I switched my full-time job. So the call center was shifts that ranged from 6 in the morning until 11:30 p.m. at night. And I then changed my job to be what was supposed to be like be more part-time. But that part-time still worked to be like 35 hours a week. But it changed the shift pattern and the times of which I had to work. So I was doing full-time university while also effectively doing a full-time job in a call center, and missing out on all of the fun starting university experience. So this was at the age of 23. So then I started the performing arts course, and there was, again, similar to high school, there was a lot of theory, which I wasn't particularly interested in. But there was also enough practical stuff to still enjoy it and kind of keep going. I didn't pass a couple of subjects. And so during the term break, it's during the summer holidays of, this is 2007, I think it was, I had to do some summer break stuff to remain on the course. Went into year 2 of the course, and then a couple of months into the second year, one of the tutors said, "Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What do you want your life to be like?" And in that moment, I was thinking about the degree and what they were teaching us. I was like, this thing is teaching me to be a teacher. This is gearing me up to be an educator, and I don't want that. So I quit. That day, I quit the performing arts degree. And I was like, well, how do I make acting work? For me to be able to be available all the time, to go to auditions when I need to go to auditions, what is the next best thing that I can do? And in my head, it was, I need to make enough money to have in the bank to not have to work for 12 months. That was my rationalization. It's like, okay, I now know that if I want to make it as an actor, I have to be available whenever an agent calls me and says, you've got an audition. And so I was like, okay, I was reading through newspapers and stuff, and I knew people that did recruitment. I was like, okay, I can go and do recruitment, and I can make a shitload of money, get that in the bank, and then I can take a year off and start becoming an actor, do the acting. And this was in 2008. Which, if anybody is old enough to have been working at that point in time, either in the UK, maybe less so in Australia, but that was the beginning of the recession, or the last recession anyway. So my money-making career did not go as well as I had hoped, but I maintained recruitment for a couple of years, and then I got let go from my job because the recession happened. And then I was no longer working in recruitment. I worked in a bar for a little while. I had my mortgage, and it was that point in my life that I was like, what am I going to do? I've got all of this responsibility. I can't get a job because of the recession. I'm working in a bar, earning a grand total of, I don't know, £250 a week. No, I must have been way less than that, actually. It wasn't a lot of money. I can't afford to pay my mortgage. I was in arrears, and in my head, I was like, okay, I will declare myself bankrupt. I'll get rid of my house. I'll get rid of all of my debt, and then I will start again. And then I'll pursue acting. And I started to make inquiries. I hadn't been home to Australia in 4 years at that point. And I'd said when I was making these inquiries, the woman said, look, if you declare yourself bankrupt at this point, and then you go home to Australia for a holiday, when you come back, the government can put restrictions on your passport for 7 years, and then you won't be able to leave the country. And I was like, okay, all right. So I recalibrated and decided, all right, I'll go home to Australia for a holiday, and then I'll come back and I'll declare myself bankrupt and I'll do all of that. I came back to Australia for a holiday in April 2009. There wasn't really a recession here. I mean, they said that there was a GFC, but compared to the UK, there wasn't. So I told myself, if I can get a full-time job paying a certain amount of money, I'll get that, and I'll just pay off all my debt, and I'll do that. I think I had like £25,000 worth of debt because I was a student for a while, and then I wasn't making money in recruitment, so I was paying all of my mortgage and debt using credit cards and overdrafts and all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Woe is me. And then I just stayed in Australia. And at that point, acting just was no longer a thing for me because I was just trying to survive and just trying to pay off all my debt without being someone that just was throwing away my responsibility. So yeah, it wasn't really, I didn't really do anything with acting for a long time. So that was 2009. And I moved to Sydney in 2011 and started seeing my ex-partner. And he was a full-time student. So then I was working full-time. Well, after a year, he became a full-time student for 4 years. So then I had 2 people to support. So I was working full-time. I couldn't really do acting because there was all of this stuff to pay for. But we would go to the theatre, and every time we went to the theatre, I would get this rush of like excitement. And not just because I was seeing theatre, but because I was imagining myself on stage. Up until this point, I'd never done any screen work at all. And I'd taken a big break from acting. And my boyfriend said to me, I think this was like 2017, he's like, you get so excited by this and you talk about wanting to be an actor. If you are so passionate about it, I do not understand why you are not working in this creative field and why you are not acting. And then I was like, you're right. Why am I not doing it? And that's when I decided to change and focus back in acting, which was 2017. So I then, I'd always worked full-time jobs. I then changed my career into organizational change management, which is what I do now. But I changed into not working permanently and working as a day rate contractor. So that's when I applied to do the showreel course at Screenwise, which was 2 nights a week. So it was really easy to fit in with work. I didn't have an agent at that point in my life, but I made the decision that acting was the career that I wanted. And I always had to make acting the priority. So I'm very fortunate now, 5 years later, that I work in a career as a day rate contractor that if I don't work a day, similar to if you're working in a bar or working in a restaurant, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And that's the reality of being an actor, right? And the decisions and sacrifices that you have to make. Do I do the audition, or do I go to work, or do I work on this unpaid acting gig, or do I do a shift? Like that, they're the decisions that have to be made. I'm really fortunate that the career choice that I made into being an organizational change manager, it pays really well. So I can afford to be like, okay, student film, got a gig. It's 2 days off work that I don't get paid for, but I made a commitment to myself that acting is my priority. I'll take those 2 days. I tell work that I'm not working, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. You've delivered the things that you need to deliver, and we're not paying you for not showing up for work. So off you go. And I'm really lucky that I can just, at the drop of a hat, be like, I'm not coming in tomorrow. Like, okay. So, and that's kind of where I am now. But now I'm, 5 years into that journey of focusing on my acting career, and, so much has changed. Mindset, yeah, sorry. I don't even remember what the question was, but that's
neither do
the
I.
UK's I think the original question was, how did you get from the UK back to Australia and back into acting, or into acting? So yeah, that's
which you entered. So good job, you. No, I think
Really
what I
hard
love.
being on the receiving
I
end of
know,
questions.
I know. You're like, what was the question again? I'm like, it doesn't matter. We're just here to listen.
Yeah.
What I love about that story is it's such an amazing example of, I think, specifically with creative careers, we kind of view our career going like an upward trajectory. Wow. Rachel struggles to say words. And, you think, oh, I'll do this, and then I get to here, and then I get to here, and then I get to here, and it's like an upward thing. Whereas that's not the case. Like, it can be, sure, but it's for like so very few people. And I think it's really important to note that it's always such an up and down journey. Like, one time you're up doing the things that you want to do, and then like there's a lull. And that's for most people that I know. And it's really interesting, like the extended period of time that you kind of took off of acting and were focusing on different things. And I think obviously it's shaped the creative that you are today, and it's shaped the drive that you have for being an actor and a creative. And I think that's really important. Like, I think a lot of us say, oh, I wish that, I was in acting when I was a teenager, because then I would just have so much success now. And I wish I had it this way, and I wish I had it that way. And of course, it's okay to feel like that. But I think it's also important to note that, the things that have happened to you have made you who you are. And as a result, it's why you're here today. And I think that that's really important. And so I really love hearing, that you took so much time, because I think a lot of people are very fearful about taking extended periods off of acting, because they think, oh no, if I take this much time off, people are going to think that I don't want to be an actor anymore, or do I want to be an actor anymore? Or I'm just going to have to start at square one again, and it's going to be a whole thing. And it's like, nothing really matters,
No.
Like nothing at the end of the day, nothing that you're doing is going to have an astronomical effect on your creative career, in a negative way,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely many, many times throughout the last, however many years, questioned whether or not it's a career choice that is right for me, and whether or not I will, quote unquote, make it.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been factors that have kind of led into that, whether it's been circumstantial of, well, I'm supporting my partner through 4 years of education, so I've got to work, and focusing on myself is kind of not important right now. To when I quit university, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna focus on earning money. I made a friend who is in the industry, and I was working. He was a regular in a bar that I worked in, and we became friends. And he was a writer and often sat on the casting couch for Hollyoaks. So he was somebody in the industry. And this is probably around, what would I say, 2008-ish was when I stopped, quit university. And, I just casually asked him, I'm like, what do I got to do to be an actor? And this was still at a time that I didn't really understand what it took to be an actor. And I, just genuinely asked. I'm like, what does it take? What do I got to do? And his response to me was, you'll never be an actor. You'll never make it as an actor. And I was like, what? And he said, well, you're too big. You are too big to be an actor. You could be a extra and you could make decent money as a bouncer or as a barman or as a police officer, but you are too big to ever be a leading man or to make it in the acting industry. And that was a really, what's the word? Formative comment to the next few years. So even though I had got into recruitment to try and make money to take time off as an actor, at that point in my life, and then I didn't focus on it again until 2017. That was a really big instigator as to why I didn't act for a long time, because I was told I would never make it.
Fuck
because
that guy.
Of the way that I looked. Well, yeah, because of the way that I looked, and that coupled with being a gay man and whatever, and that being gay man has nothing to do with it. Well, it does a little bit into decisions around acting, but which I could talk about as well. But that kind of fed into what then became quite a big body image issue for myself around the way that I look and the way that I present myself and what that means either to acting, but even just to me as a human being. So yeah, that was a major catalyst in not pursuing or thinking about acting for a very long time.
Yeah, well, that raises a great question then. I'm curious as to what the journey was in terms of like your mindset around your appearance, being an actor, and then also, you know, as you say, being a gay man. I think when this was happening back in the 2000s, the industry was terribly shit with diversity in any sense. And so what has your journey been? Because like your appearance and then, you know, what you identify as in terms of sexuality is like a lot of the, you know, Danny as a person. And so that must have caused a lot of like an identity crisis almost, because you're trying to pursue this thing, but then you're being told who you are as a person means that you're not going to be an actor because of who you are. And so what was the journey in terms of mindset going from that to who you are today?
Okay, so I'll tackle the body image thing first. Regardless of acting or not acting, that's probably been, ever since that day, has been a pretty major hang up for me. From an acting perspective, I think probably less so now, but for a very long time, that meant to me that if I wanted to be a successful actor, I had to have a six-pack and I had to look good and I had to look like those leading men, because, you know, the leading guys are always guys that have a good chest and good abs, and, you know, if you see their bum, it's perfect. Like, they have the perfect body. And that meant that I was constantly, you know, going to the gym all the time, and I'm always dieting, and then that becomes a yo-yo thing of like, oh, I lose weight, yay, I've lost weight, and then I'm like, oh, I'll reward myself with food, but then I become an emotional eater anyway, which I'm working on. But anyway, so that, as I said, that was a catalyst to me not thinking about or pursuing acting for a long time. It was a catalyst for a lot of personal body image issues. The gay thing, there hasn't been a lot of, you know, like many diversity issues or minority groups, homosexuality is not something that has been heavily portrayed in media. And when it was never gay actors that were playing those particular roles.
Yeah.
So not only was I worried about how I looked physically, I was also very worried about how I present. What I mean by that is being sure that I don't want to be considered camp. I don't want people to look at me and go, he's gay, because I didn't want casting directors or anybody that was considering me for acting in anything to look at me and go, well, he can't play this role because he is a gay man or he presents effeminately, etc. And that ended up, I think, stifling my acting ability for a very long time. Because every self-tape or every scene that I was choosing, or even scripts that I was writing, it was always heterosexual men. Yeah. And I was not, because I was being very considered about, okay, like I have some very natural mannerisms and stuff that can be considered effeminate or gay or whatever. Like I'm a sarcastic person quite naturally, which, and the way that I sometimes come across sarcastically could be considered kind of gay. So I stifled all of the natural meisms. Is that a word? Meisms? I stifled all the things that intrinsically make me, to present a version of myself that I thought or think people want to see for me to be successful in acting.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a conversation with somebody that you've also interviewed on your podcast, George Constance. I did a consult with him.
Yeah,
the branding
George
guy.
can stand. Yeah.
Yeah.
We love George.
Yeah, he's great. That was a transformative experience for me. He told me, he's like, are you gay? Are you or bi? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gay. And he goes, I don't see any of that in any of the material that you have. Like, you present as a sensitive, like the who you are and what you look like, and like you present as this, your facial features, you're a sensitive, genuine kind of person, and that's what people see when they look at you. But all of your show reels and everything that you're showing is like the tough guy or the abuser or the whatever. And then he's like, I don't believe it. I don't see any of that. And you should be leaning into the gay. Like, there's so much LGBT content being made now that you should be focusing on that. And that was only September last year.
Wow.
That it's only been the last 8 or 9 months where I've been like, fuck it. I can be myself. I can be free in who I am and let my natural instincts shine through in my work.
Yeah.
And my self-tapes immediately and infinitely got better because I wasn't trying to present a version of myself that I thought people wanted to see to get the roles that I thought I needed to get to make it as an actor, which were straight male presenting roles. And let's face it, actually, no, I won't say that.
And let's face it, nothing.
I will bite my... yeah, so... Yeah, it was really interesting. And now I'm leaning into the gay a lot more. So I've now, I had an idea for a script.
Yes, yeah. I was going to ask you about this as well. So go ahead.
Well, sorry. Let me let you ask a question.
Well, number one, I think like when you say leaning into the gay, you're leaning into yourself. You're leaning into who you are as a person. And like, oh my God, like I love what you just said about like how your self-tapes immediately got better because you started being honest with who you were and what you were bringing of yourself to that character. Like, like people listening, really listen to that. Like that is just such an important lesson that I think we all need to be constantly putting into our work and is a massive, big why as to why we're doing the work. But the other week we were talking and you were telling me about this short film that you have done, which is LGBTQ focused. And so what made you want to start writing scripts, because writing is completely different to acting, and what was the kind of impetus to write a story like this?
Okay. There's a couple of reasons here. One being the main one being that I'm not getting cast in anything. I'm not the only auditions that I get through Australian casting, because I am a bald man or I am a man with a shaved head, is for the role of a tradie or a labourer.
Oh, good.
They are the only auditions I get. I flirted with a hairpiece for a little while. It changed what I looked like immediately. I immediately got auditions that were not for labourers and tradies.
Wow.
So unfortunately, image still can be an issue from a typecasting perspective, but that's a whole thing that we don't have time to talk about right now. Initially I started writing stuff because I thought I need to make my own content to have work that isn't a self-tape in front of a blue screen. And that was the main reason for wanting to write. Now, making it LGBT, the script that I have, the original idea wasn't LGBT. So when I was at Screenwise, there was a beautiful actress in the class, Preeti, who was an Indian actress, and she could not find any scripts that suited her or that worked for her to do her show reel. So I wrote a scene for her. So it didn't matter. I wrote this scene for her, which was basically a very quick speed dating scene around mistaken identity. I won't go too much into detail because it will give away the bang of my script. But I wrote this for her, and afterwards I was like, I'd like to turn this into a full short film. With the idea of me playing the male lead, me making myself the male lead, but a heterosexual scene or a heterosexual short film set in a speed dating environment. Had a conversation with George, and then I was like, why do I need to make this a straight speed dating? That's so expected.
Yeah.
I'll just make it gay. Then it's me being me in a speed dating situation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it came about. And now I've created this LGBT kind of script with themes around being ghosted, themes around the negative self-talk that we give ourselves when something happens. But if you get ghosted, it must be because I'm ugly or not good in some way. Kind of like when you audition and don't get feedback. These are the type of themes that I'm tackling within the film. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm shooting it for SF3 Film Festival, which is a smartphone film festival. It will be shooting in the next couple of months because the deadline is August 1 to be submitted. But yeah, that's how I got to writing about an LGBT script, and why I started writing in the first place.
That's awesome. Now I know that you like to wrap up around the hour mark, but I really just quickly.
That's okay. We can keep going.
Okay, good.
I have to meet someone. I have to meet somebody in 17 minutes, but
okay, no worries.
Who hopefully will be my love interest in the short film.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's important. But I really quickly want to touch on podcasting. I know this is, a podcast about actors, but seeing as we're both podcasters and we're here, I think it'd be very interesting to talk about, one, where your interest in podcasting first started, and two, what made you decide to do a podcast about actors, their journeys and how they're making it work for them. And I will note, I think when you listen to podcasts, whoever's listening to this, and I think they don't realize how hard podcasting is. And, you and I always say to each other, it's it's so hard because you're doing it all yourself. You really get no feedback. You're kind of putting stuff out there, and it's really hard to know if it's any good or what to do, especially when it's an interview-based podcast, because people who have co-hosts, they're bouncing off each other, and but you and I, we have to come up with ideas ourselves. It is so much work, and it's acting, but it's another form of, it's just as much work as pursuing an acting career. And so, I wonder, where did your interest start, and why did you decide to do a podcast about actors?
Sure. My interest in podcasting started, interest in podcasting, I'll come to in a moment. My interest in podcasts started probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started listening to podcasts, and they've always been podcasts that are like self-helpy in some kind of way or informative. Like I don't listen to fictional podcasts. I don't listen to true crime podcasts or stuff like that. I've always listened to interview-based podcasts, and a lot of the podcasts that I was listening to as an actor were acting ones, like Backstage's In the Envelope. There's a guy called Chris Hardwick who interviews, it used to be the Nerdist podcast, but is now called ID10T. And he interviews actors and creatives constantly. And so I was listening to a lot of podcasts that were interviewing actors, but they were always actors that were well known. And usually the podcasts, they weren't surface level per se, but there was always an element of this is part of a press junket for a film that they are trying to promote. So it becomes conversations about that particular thing. We don't hear, I wasn't hearing, the conversations with Margot Robbie or anybody else about all of the graft and learnings that they had before they got that role that made them an overnight success.
Yeah.
So I was listening to that, and there's loads of other different podcasts I listened to. It wasn't just acting stuff, but I listen to podcasts or audiobooks now more than I listen to music. So I used to listen to music all the time. Now I listen to podcasts. And I started riding a motorcycle. Well, I say a motorcycle. If I say scooter, people think I mean like a little razor scooter along the pavement. But I ride a moped, and so I ride to work every day. And so I was listening to podcasts on my commute and when I'm riding. So I just really got into podcasts, and there are so many different ones that I listen to that have been transformative to me as a person. So that was where my interest in podcasts came from. My interest in podcasting came from... I don't know that I ever had an interest in podcasting, actually, to be honest with you. It wasn't necessarily something that I was like, I want to become a podcast host. I never thought I want to be a podcaster. I did know that what I wanted to hear was stories from actors about trying to make it. I did know that I wasn't hearing, like back to our conversation earlier of, I wish I had have done it when I was a kid or a teenager. Yeah. I wish I'd have known when I was 18 years old and moved to England that if I wanted to make it as an actor, I had to sacrifice certain things. And that sounds more dire than it is. But if I had have known that the types of decisions that I had to make, or the types of things that I had to do, the headshot stuff, the showreel stuff, if I had to know that sometimes you've got to say, I'm not coming into work and I'm not going to make that money because I'm going to go to an audition or I'm going to film something. If I had have known that, I do wonder where I would be in my life, in my acting journey now, had I have known that. So I had a desire, I suppose, to share those stories with people and actors that are trying to make it, because, I went to Screenwise and I now have so many actor friends, and whether it's virtually or physically knowing actors, I hear the same stories all the time. I'm not getting auditions through my agent. I'm not getting callbacks. There must be something wrong with me. Or people that are like, I'm trying to get an agent. I can't get an agent, but I'm just waiting until I film this next thing. Like once I film this next thing, then I'll have something better for my showreel, and then I can start talking to agents.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
But it's the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm just like, it's not you. We're all experiencing this. And I started to put the pieces together that I have like this myriad of friends that are all experiencing the same thing, but the one thing that they all have in common is that they all blame themselves for why they are not where they want to be. Now, yes, there are times when you could probably be more productive or proactive in your acting career. But just because you don't get an audition, or you didn't land the audition, or you haven't landed an agent, that doesn't mean that you're not good, or you're not worthy, or you're not valid as an actor.
Yeah.
And you're not it's not unique to you. And I want people to kind of, like you said before about why you wanted to be an actor, is you wanted people to feel that they weren't alone. That is ultimately why I started this podcast, is I want actors to know that they are not alone, and that it's okay to take, what was effectively almost a decade of a break for me. It's okay to take a break. That's fine. And if you don't come back to it, that's fine too. But it's okay to take a break. It's okay to feel a little bit negative. It's okay to whatever. That to me is why I wanted to start this podcast, and why I continue to do it. And, I make jokes all the time on my podcast. I'm like, for the two of you listening out there, like, if I help one person to go, fuck, okay, I'm going to pull myself out of bed and stop eating this thing that's making me feel better, because I know that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Then I've done my job.
I love that. And I think that you are definitely succeeding in doing that with your podcast. And from podcaster to podcaster, I always admire anyone who, consistently podcasts, because it's a challenge to, have that why and to execute it every single week or every single fortnight or whatever. And so I love that, and I love the podcast, and I think that your audience definitely gets that out of it. So would you like to wrap up your podcast?
I would wrap up. I'm gonna I guess just say one thing, just because it's something that I always ask my guests, which is around what my idea of making it was when I started out, and what my idea of making it is now. And I think, like many people, my idea of making it was Oscars and fame and fortune and whatever. And I think that, wow, that went very high pitched. If I'm truly honest with myself, I don't know that has actually changed for me. Okay, let me rephrase. That's my idea of making it now, actually, is being able to work constantly and support myself financially in the life that I've become accustomed to, purely through acting or the creative field. That's my idea of making it now.
And I think also we can add on to that. Obviously, there is a section of making it where you do attend the Oscars. So that's not to say that, that doesn't happen. So, yeah.
No. Well, I guess what I was going to say is I thought my idea of making it hasn't changed, but then I was like, no, actually, my idea of making it has changed, but my goal has not.
Yeah.
So my goal is still to attend an Oscars and to make myself a known entity as far as acting is concerned. But my idea of making it is being able to feed myself and my dog and have a roof over my head through acting alone.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah.
Well, I've so enjoyed hearing your story. Thank you for having me here and letting me listen to you.
Thank you for asking questions and doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Hopefully something comes from this for people, and it's I don't know. We always think my journey isn't that exciting. It's not that interesting. It doesn't really matter. But I think we all go through stuff, and we all experience things in our lives, and they all become informative to who we are. And if there is anything that I can leave people with, is what I said earlier, is that I truly believe that life is what you make it. Shit happens to us we get to choose how we let that affect us emotionally and mentally. That's not to take away from any kind of mental health conditions that exist. But I do strongly believe that we all have a choice to wallow or not and make something of ourselves. If you want to be an actor, get out there and do it. If you want, if that's what your dream is, but you keep telling yourself, "Oh, I'm too old," or "It's too late," it's not. You know?
Yeah.
People play grandmas in films. People play granddads in films. It's never too late. Just get out there and do it. Thank you so much,
I love that.
Rachel. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Danny.
you spending some time with me.